we're going to be talking about the CodeIgniter Crud application. And so basically a basic blog application, and we'll go into details here. So the overview, we're going to see exactly what the differences are between CodeIgniter 2.0 and 1.7. Go over how to set up CodeIgniter 2.0 pretty briefly. It's very simple setup. Comparison, like having worked with setting up Symfony this weekend, I set up CodeIgniter in 15 minutes, and I was a bit learning Symfony, but it was several hours of just configuration and trying to figure things out. So if you need something really simple and rapid application development, that's really where CodeIgniter has its niche. It is something that you need to get going quickly, and you have a small application or an interesting idea that you want to create. Definitely highly recommended for that type of thing. So then we're going to talk about things that were added in 2.0 and go over the MVC structure, dive into the code. Julie's going to talk about that. And at the end, we're going to do some live coding, because the application is not quite done, but there's one little thing that we're going to add. I don't know if you guys know, Crud stands for create, read, update, and delete. So we're going to do the delete functionality there at the end. So that is what we're going to talk about tonight. Let me bring up CodeIgniter 2 here. So this is what it looks like when you first download it. Minus the public folder, this is something that I added after the fact. This is how a lot of other frameworks do it. They have a public or a web folder that is the actual root for the website. So I've gotten in the habit of doing this for my CodeIgniter projects now. So basically, I take the index PHP and I stick it into the public folder, and then edit it and add the rest of the stuff that is public facing. So that's a little bit different, but if you are welcome to do it how I do it or your own way. And CodeIgniter is flexible in some things, but it is a little bit more difficult to extend, like the router or the dispatcher, and the base core components of the MVC stack out of the box. It's a lot easier to modify and extend with using Zen Framework versus CodeIgniter. So if all the application files in your website basically is going to be in the application folder. System is going to be like your core files. You don't have to edit anything in the system folder. But if we go into the application folder, this will look, if you work with 1.7 at all, this will look very familiar. You have your config folder, your controller, more helper files. This is where the cache folder is, and basic other places to put code is what it boils down to. But you can see that the MVC stack lives in the application folder model, views, and controllers up here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You had mentioned 1.7 a couple of times, which just reminded me, how often do updates come out for CodeIgniter, or how do you have any experience in how smoothly those usually go?
So usually upgrading, upgraded from like 1.6 to 1.7, and that was fairly easy. Not a lot of, depends on how you build your application, I think. So and that is one aspect to CodeIgniter, is that I think that the community is very large. There is like 50,000 people that are registered in the forums, but it has been around for 4 or 5 years. So people, I think, a lot of times will start out learning CodeIgniter if they are unfamiliar with MVC stack, and then move on to other frameworks. It depends on the size of the shop and and the website that they're trying to build. There was a big lag between 1.7 and 2, and this was primarily because the people that are paid to work on it and sort of manage the open source project is a company called Ellis Labs, and they have a commercial application called Expression Engine, which is a blog type application. And so they actually rewrote that entire application, the Expression Engine 1 to Expression Engine 2, and so what they did was they rewrote it using CodeIgniter. So before it was based off some earlier work that they had done, but now that that they've seen that CodeIgniter has this large following, they took the time to do that. So that's why there was that big lag between 1.7 and 2. But that being said, I do think that there are other frameworks that are updated more frequently. Currently, I don't think that used to be the case. I remember back in the 1.0, the 1.2 to 1.5 days was fairly rapid. But and I'm hoping that the 2.0 release will spur some more contributions. But we will see how things work out. So setting up your CodeIgniter application, there's some basic things that you're going to do. And primarily you focus on the configuration config folder. So if we go into this folder, usually the first thing that I do, we need to set up a database. And so you open this file up, and then you can see here, you just fill out your host name, username, password, and all that stuff. And all that information has been filled out. I'm not going to scroll to the bottom because this site is live, and then I will have to change the password. But so it's pretty easy. You can fill out multiple databases if you need to, and do some custom configuration type stuff as required. So that's one of the first things I edit. The next thing is the config.php. And sometimes you add something here if the base URL is different. And then this is always index.php. And as you can see here, I've deleted it because we're using htaccess to remove the index.php to make the URLs a little bit nicer. So what else do we have in here? If you're using, I think sessions are in this folder. It has built-in session management. And if you are using sessions, you need to set your encryption key. So you do that there in config.php. It comes with, this is the information for the session table, and you can modify that there. I usually leave it as default. I'll go over the database structure here in a sec. Let's see, there's some other CSRF tokens, compression, whether or not the short tags are turned on. Usually leave them off. Yeah.
On the CSRF, how complex is that to use? You just have to note on the form they're using, or are you going to cover that?
So the CSRF protection, I think that was something that was added recently, and I haven't messed with it a whole lot, but we could maybe at the interactive part and you can turn it on and see what it does. Basically, if you don't know what CSRF is, it's to prevent cross-site request forgery, and where people can post stuff to like a form on your page from another domain, and there's all sorts of different attacks. Could be using JavaScript, or they could save the page locally or to another machine and like automatically post it. And so what the CSRF token does is it generates a random string of numbers and then embeds it into the page. And then so you need a valid token in order to submit the form. And so this is how you can ensure that people are viewing the web page on your website and it's valid. Like, it's a session. It's sort of like it's a different, sessions can be spoofed and you don't want to rely just on sessions. But you can store the CSRF token in the session if you need to. So that's CSRF. Let's see here, what else we do. I think the auto load is the other file that we're going to take a look at here. So auto load libraries is another thing that you're going to want to add. And these are the two ones that I added. You can basically tell it any of the libraries that CodeIgniter comes with. So you can auto-load any of these libraries. HTML tables, image manipulation, input, sessions, that was one that I did auto-load. And then helpers are in a different area, but in that same file. So these are just libraries in this class reference area here. As if you wanted to auto-load libraries that you wrote, you can do that as well. And how CodeIgniter works is it will first look in its own system libraries. Yeah, there. So first it looks in the libraries folder here for a class name that corresponds with that auto load. And then if it doesn't find it, it says, okay, well, it must be in the application folder. So it'll go and dive into this folder. So in this presentation, we don't have any libraries. We had considered using DXOff to do user management. It's also called ACL in some places. But basically, create an account on the website, that sort of thing, manage users, and so that would be a place where libraries, that would where you would put that. And I think I did a presentation last year on 1.7 CodeIgniter and with the Zen framework, and this is where I put the entire Zen framework stack inside CodeIgniter in the libraries folder, and then I have like a bootstrap type file that I could call that referenced the Zen framework classes. So libraries and helpers are something that existed in 1.7, and you can see that they're still there in 2.0.
Do you know if most of them are 2.0 compatible by now, or
yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, again, it probably depends on if you wrote your own stuff. It depends on how you wrote it.
So some of them would just work.
I would imagine most of them would. Big differences with CodeIgniter 2 is it's no longer PHP 4 compatible. So if you're like old school, you definitely have to refactor your application if you're still using Zen or PHP 4.
Is it PHP 5.3 or 5.2?
I think it's 5.2. It's a minimum. I don't know exact. I would imagine 5.2.8 or so. We'll take a look. Visual will go over the controller structure, and as you'll see, they're not using namespaces, where Symfony and Zen Framework 2 have namespaces all over the place. So they are not taking advantage of the 5.3 stuff to maintain that 5.2 level of compatibility. And I think that's a smart move, because if you look at the actual numbers of people that are using 5.2 versus 5.3, I think Keith said that it's like 60 or 80% of people that are writing PHP are still using 5.2, and that may be decreasing now that the distros have started to pick up the 5.3, but if you imagine any sort of large company, it takes a while to implement these level of changes. So I think that's probably why it's been such a slow adoption of 5.3 in the marketplace. All right, so where were we? Auto load helpers. So again, this comes blank URL and file. I don't think we're actually using file, but I just did it as an example, just in case. So that's pretty much all there is for auto load. And really, you don't even have to do that much. The welcome page basically will come up usually without any modifications. You may have to do some HT access or stuff like that, but it usually just works. And this is what you will see if you upload CodeIgniter, the classic welcome screen. And the front controller is index.php here. And you can access the controllers by just adding it onto the URL here. Visual will go into that here. So I think that's pretty much it in terms of setting up CodeIgniter. Anybody have any questions at this point?
You said using namespaces in alternative order.
So namespaces are just a way to you don't have to use them, but it's very good for frameworks, and that's like the general consensus, I think, in the community, because it's a way to say all, like you have your Zen namespace, so all the Zen framework core code lives in that namespace. So if you work at Acme Code, then you would have an Acme namespace, and all your code would live in that. So it makes it easier to include and access certain classes within your application. I don't want to go too much into namespaces, but it is quite a handy feature that I think that you will see a lot of newer applications will start to adopt. But it doesn't mean that you have to use them. But I'm just trying to say that I've seen, based on the other frameworks out there, that they are moving to using namespaces.
I think one of the benefits is that it forces you to stick to a structure rather than just having classes all over the place that do the access of the process. When you establish a namespace, you establish a structure for the application and how different classes can be accessed.
Yep. think if you go to the Austin Tech videos, 2 months ago, Josh talked about the PHP 5.3 features, and he touched briefly on namespaces. So you could do that, but there's a lot of information out there. You know, the help page is great. So, it's pretty easy concept. Just if you write some demo code and start messing with it, and it'll snap in place. So I think I'm going to pass it over to Joel here, and he will dive into the actual application itself.
Hi guys, my name is Rajul, call me Raj. So me and Logan built the blog application that I'm going to be demoing now. As Logan mentioned earlier, the CodeIgniter user guide is amazing. They have everything thoroughly documented with examples. So if you're ever stuck, the first place you want to go is a user guide. So we can go ahead and start with the front controller.
What is a controller?
A controller is basically, it's almost like the head of the application. It's business logic. It contains purely business logic, and it directs the request to the appropriate place. And so it displays the proper view. It accesses the data from the model. And so it's basically the logical head of the application. And so somewhere in the config, you can specify which controller you want the application to start with. So by default, it's going to automatically assume that you want to start with that controller.
Next one. Search for welcome. Go back to the folder.
I'm just deleting it to
So
There we go.
this is where you specify what you want the default controller to be. So we can change that to blog, since that's our front controller. And then so we go into the controllers folder within application. Like Logan mentioned earlier, the application folder is ideally the only thing you'd want to have visible to the web. Public. So once you go into the controllers, let's open up the blog. So this is basically what a basic controller class looks like. The first thing is each controller has to have a file name that's in all lowercase. You cannot have the uppercase characters in your file name. The first letter of the name of your blog, the name of your controller has to always start with a capital letter. It cannot start with the lowercase letter. It also has to extend the CI controller class, and that's basically what allows your controller to access some of the built-in functionality of CodeIgniter, like the load object. And what load does is it allows you to load views or models into your controller so you can direct the request to the appropriate location. Here we have the constructor. And you can basically that run first when you call the controller without any new arguments. So when you simply go to CodeIgniter.lvbl.com/blog, you specified that you want the blog controller to be displayed, but you haven't really specified which method should be called. The way you do that, the way CodeIgniter is set up, is next argument would be the method, and then any subsequent input is directed to the function as a parameter. So let's say you wanted to get the text that I just put in for the URL, you would just have a variable. So what that's going to do is it's going to call the index method in blog and pass it 3, 4, 4, 5.
Or if you had more than one.
You can just keep concatenating.
Cool.
And that's the blog post, the 3, 4, 4, 5, or you're passing an argument
into the method. You're passing an argument into the method that you call.
So it could be the blog post, but it could be some other.
It could be, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It could be, I don't know, welcome. Or it could be,
We didn't implement the ability for it to like view a step 1 blog post. It just currently blog index. It just displays all the blog posts. He was just going over how to pass in arguments into the controller.
so now that we have the index method, what we do first is load the model. We show the model that we have. We've basically structured our model in modular fashion so that we have a folder inside it called Crud, and then inside that we have the block model. Once again, you cannot have any uppercase characters in your file name for the model. And the first character of the name of your classes also has to be capital. And the model will extend the CI model class, and it allows you to access the database object, which basically allows you to connect to the database, run queries, and then fetch the results back. And so these are the methods that we currently have in the model. Pretty straightforward. The one that we're using, the main index method of the block controller, is the get 10 entries method, and all that does is basically generate a SQL statement, pass it to the query method, which within the DB object. The DB object has a lot of methods that basically allow you to
Upper right.
interact with the database. So here it is. So query is one of the methods. There's tons of other methods that you can use. There's also the active record pattern. I don't know if you guys know what the active record pattern basically allows you to convert your data model into a PHP object so you can access properties within your database just like a class. So we run the query, and then the query variable now contains the database, the result that the query that we just ran. And then we're simply going to run the numRows method on it, and then check to make sure that there were records returned. If there were records returned, return the query result, and what that basically will return is an object will contain an object of the results that was passed. So your columns basically turn into properties within the object.
Generating results.
So this is basically how it works. It basically contains a collection of records which then have properties such as your columns. So this basically assumes that you have your schema has a title column, a name column, a body column. So when you query, you get a result back, and then you basically traverse those results to get those records. And if we don't have your records returned, we just return false. So once we've loaded the model, the syntax of loading the model is the first parameter that you pass in is the location of the model. That's relative to the model folder. So if you have a folder within your models folder, you want to specify that you have a subfolder. Once you've loaded the model, you can access the model just like you would access the class, and you would get run the method, program method, and then you can load the view. And the way the views are loaded is the first parameter is always the location of the view, where it's located within the application. It's going to be relative to the views folder. So within our views folder, we have the Crud folder, which contains the main.php. And so what we're doing in our controller is when we get the output of the method that we have in our model, we can get that data and then we can pass it in an array to the view. And what that basically, what CodeIgniter does at that point is it looks at the array that's passed to it in data, and it will create an object for each element that you have in your array. So within your view, you can then access the elements that you have in your array just like you would a variable. So to give you an example, what we could do is add another element, and I'll just call it and we would then be able to go into our view and access that data that we just passed in just like a normal variable, and it would be named exactly what we named it as an element, as a key of that array.
If you save it, it will upload it if you want to show them the result.
So we could see something crash.
Yes. Left.
There it is.
Shoot.
And so that's basically how it works. You usually create an array of data that you want to pass into your view, and then you pass in that data as an array into your view, and then traverse that array in your view. And there's built-in functions to do that. CodeIgniter allows you to use Smarty template system, and basically it allows you to output PHP variables and use for each statements, conditional statements, if then statements. Usually comes in handy if you have a web designer or someone who's not as comfortable with PHP designing the front end of the application. Usually they probably want to do it in something like Smarty, which basically doesn't involve any PHP coding, and it allows you to get access to the data from the controller at the same time. So let me show you the view class and what it can do. So another thing you could do is, rather than calling the view like this, what that would do is immediately return the output of the view to the browser. And so if you don't want the output of the view to be returned to the browser, instead if you want to load the header portion of the HTML separately and then cache it in a variable and then output it later at a later point in time, what you want to do is pass in a third parameter, true. And what that basically does is it allows you to store the output of your view into a variable, so then you can later output it.
Now, when you, I'm not great at PHP, but I'm looking at this and the data variable, is that, where are you pulling the 10 entries from? Just get 10 entries?
From the model.
From the model.
Block model.
So after you've loaded the model, the second parameter I forgot to mention is specifies what you want the object to be named. And so even though you've loaded the block model, you can basically refer to it within your code as something else. So you could call it I don't know, the Austin model. And then thereafterwards you could refer to that model. You're still using the block model, but you can refer to it using another name.
Like if you're using the same model in two different views, you might call it different things, and it's different views you're using for different resources.
More or less, yeah. It's basically a reference to the actual model. It's just the awesome model itself is not, the awesome model itself at this point is an object reference to the block model.
And that function itself is pulling it from a class or from talking about the model. I mean, where is it pulling its data? It's pulling it from the database?
Yep, right. This itself, this is the block model.
Okay. So the posts themselves are in like a SQL database.
Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't go over the structure of the SQL database, but maybe I'll cover that at the end.
Okay.
Okay.
So the posts are basically contained within a table. That's Crud _ posts.
Okay.
And so when we execute the SQL statement over here, the query variable now contains the results of that query that was run, and that contains, among other things, the actual result. It's kind of misleading, but what that method basically returns is a key value pair of the results. There's also numRows, which returns the number of rows in your results of it. And there's, what else is included?
Now, out of curiosity, it's just a side issue. If you're trying to do like special characters and stuff in your blog post, would that cause any issues with this method where you're pulling stuff from the database?
It will not when you're pulling it from your database, but when you're inserting it into your database, you certainly want to sanitize it.
Yeah.
PHP has a built-in method that allows you to sanitize inputs. You could even actually create a custom library for it and just auto-load it and just access a method within that sanitization class.
I think that actually, when we were showing us the CodeIgniter documentation, you even mentioned sanitization.
There is some built-in sanitization of stuff that's patched in, but I'm not sure it covers every single database. Like MS SQL is different than MySQL, and you really have to, if you're being audited by like the PCI industry, you need, this is the type of stuff that they're going to ask you. You need to know exactly how your sanitization works.
Yeah, any sanitization that's done by a framework is usually going to be pretty permissive, because ultimately a framework is there to allow you to do whatever you want to do with it. So if you don't want to sanitize it, you don't have to sanitize it. So ideally, if you're dealing with a database, if you're dealing with if your application is going to be used by not external users, you'd want to always sanitize any input. You optionally would also want to sanitize anything you output to the browser. So if somehow, some way, any JavaScript is stored or persisted into your database, you don't want to accidentally output it. So you have to cover both ends of the
Both directions.
both directions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. That's interesting.
So in the view, we have a conditional statement. Within another thing is within the view, you can just put in just normal HTML. You can also you still have the load object available to you, so you can load other views within your views. So if, like, for example, if you have a header, which is common, you can load the header before you load the actual content of the page. As I said before, you could also do that in the controller. It just depends on the business logic, the way you want to handle that. So we're going to check if post contains data. If it did not, return false. And then we basically loop through it and access a property of the post variable like an object. And these are basically column names. Title is a column name, time posted is a column name within the blog underscore posts table. Sorry, the Crud underscore posts table.
So in theory, if you change your SQL structure, live model, or models is the only thing you should have to change to be compatible with your, you should be able to insulate. So you shouldn't have to change your views.
Exactly. So it abstracts the data access portion of it from your actual design or GUI portion of it. So the idea is that regardless of how your application looks, you're basically unifying your data model, how you want to handle your data. For example, if you're storing credit card information, or if you're storing address information, all of that has a certain specific data model. A name can only be certain characters long, and so all of that has to be handled independently of your business logic. I'm sorry, your actual view, your UI, because your HTML UI doesn't care how long your first name or your address is. It's just concerned about where it's placed. So that's basically how the view works. It abstracts the data from the business logic. Any other questions before I move along?
So we're calling this load everywhere. So I can see it for really quick, development and, really quick web blog posts, it'd be quick and easy, but like, is there overhead, associated with all, I don't know how the inner workings works, is it checking for require, if you have the same view loaded or same, I assume it's doing a bunch of different checks down below. If the, benchmarks, with CodeIgniter versus Zen Framework, et cetera, et cetera. It definitely makes it easy, right? So optimized for programmer joy, as the guys at InfoChip say, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I can speak to the performance. Until V was released recently, within the last year or two, CodeIgniter was the fastest framework out there. So you could use load, craft load places, and it's still going to perform Zen framework or Cake, at that point. So at the very low impact, they were talking about the largest, in terms of CodeIgniter, the largest impact was using the active record pattern versus just writing your raw SQL, and they were seeing performance hit of 15% or so just by using the active record pattern. So that's why I've gotten in the habit of just writing the raw SQL. But I don't know how well or what type of performance impact some of the more advanced ORMs out there are, because that's sort of what the active record pattern is doing here.
Another thing is just application design itself. If it's pretty well designed, it's going to perform relatively well. And also, if you're auto-loading tons of libraries and tons of classes, helpers that you don't need, you could also add a lot to your overhead. So generally, you want to stick to loading your libraries in your constructor. The basic necessities like the database, if you're using it a lot, you want to auto-load it. But for example, there's a form helper library. You're not going to use the form helper library in all of your controllers.
And we're using the form helper in the admin controller. Did you want me to go over the admin, or?
I can go over, yeah.
Okay.
So that basically covers the block portion of it, and this is the output. So these are the different entries within the Crud _post table. That's the title, that's the timestamp of when it was created, and then that's the contents. And so moving on to the admin portion.
This amazing admin that I built in a couple hours. So he's going to talk about the edit and the create here.
So this is what the admin page looks like. There's a new post, link to create a new post. It takes you to the same page as the edit post. I'll show you the difference in a little bit. So this, what we're doing in the index method within the admin controller is we're loading the table library, and then we're going to select start from Crud posts. That's going to give us a result of all of the posts that we currently have in a database. And then we're going to do some HTML work, and what it's going to do is what the table library is going to do is build the table that you see over here. And then what we do is we traverse through the results that we get back. We traverse through the results that we get back from the SQL that we ran. And for each post, we're going to add a row into the table library. And after all said and done, all we have to do is call the generate method on the table library object and assign it to the table element within the data array and pass the data array to the view. So the view will now be able to use the table variable and just simply output it because the HTML has already been generated over here. echoing out table. That's a pretty helpful library. There's a lot of work obviously that went into the back end of it. Part of what the table library allows you to do is it builds the columns for you, so you can specify headings, and then you can just pass it each row. Each column for each row. So edit contains the link to our edit page, the title, the content, and whether or not it was approved. So next, we can go ahead and move on to edit. And so, as you can see, like I mentioned before, the general URL structure that CodeIgniter uses is the first thing that comes first is the controller that you're calling, and then the method. The next part of the URL is your parameter that you're passing in. In this case, we're passing in 5, so we could simply type in 1 to the URL and pull up the first blog post to edit. You could also pull up the third one the same way. And so what happens when you call it like this is CodeIgniter, the index.php CodeIgniter knows that you're calling the index method, the edit method, and it knows that the number that you pass in at the end should be to the first parameter ID in this case. So once we have that within our method, we can use that. So we can create the select statement again, and this time we only want to pull back the current blog post that we're on. So we can pass the ID and filter it just by the post ID. And in this case, we're also using the form helper. What the form helper allows you to do is basically set up the different properties within your form. So in this case, you have like your name, and it basically stipulates what the maximum length of it can be. It also allows you to put in CSS styles, and all said and done, all you have to do is simply pass in the form variable into the data array, which you then pass into view, and all the view would do is simply output the contents of the form. Everything is pretty much generated for you. So there's different methods that you can call on that form helper, like the obvious ones I covered before, like setting up your properties. That's like specifying that the post title needs to be this long, it needs to be this style, and you can also specify hidden form elements. For example, like your post ID. So when the form does eventually get submitted, you'd want to know which form you're updating. So you'd want to pass the ID that you got in from the URL and pass it into the hidden element within your form, so that when you do click submit on the form, the subsequent request that goes back to the server has a way to be identified. It knows that post ID is 5, that we're updating post ID 5.
Quick question about the query. Does CodeIgniter do anything special for that ID parameter, or is that an SQL injection?
We're simply just adding variables to it. CodeIgniter doesn't really support parameterized.
It does support parameterized statements, but we're not doing any sanitization or validation of that parameter. So
And it's not doing it for you.
well, I'm not sure if we have some stuff turned on. There is some basic XSS sanitization built into CodeIgniter, but I don't remember if we turned that on or not.
Is everything done via Git? It looks like so. All the posts. I mean, everything seems to be URL and get driven.
So go to is it save for the edit? Save method? Big short answer is no. You can specify the parameters that are passed into the save method using built-in helpers and access the post variables that way. Here, I'm just doing it myself because I didn't want to use the helper for that. And basically, and so I am sanitizing the submit of the admin page using MySQL real escape string, which has since been fixed. It was broken in earlier versions of MySQL. Now it's still pretty good to use. If you want more fine-grained control of your sanitization, filter _ bars is what you want to use for that. Filter.
And so there's multiple flags that you can pass in to let it know how it should filter it or how it should validate the input. So there's two different things that you can do. You can either sanitize the input that you're receiving, or you can validate it to see whether it matches a certain criteria.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, that's another topic.
Like ideally in this case, you just want to see if it's a real ID.
Yeah.
Regardless whether it's the right characters or not, is it actually an ID?
Right. So what we could do is we could do a pre-select if we wanted to say, is there an actual any data there? And then, if there isn't, maybe go to an error page or something like that. But hopefully they're using the website and not trying to hack it.
Okay, so within the edit method, we're calling the edit create view. So if we go ahead and open that up, here you see that we're simply just echoing out the form, and once again that contained
I did have a private method at the bottom and started out like I was thinking that edit and create would be the same thing. So you can see here I made a private function form helper that I was calling, but in order to set the values in there, it was just too complicated. So I could have found a way to use the same method here, but what I ended up doing was just copying it into the edit in the create method and just modified it to work for that URL.
And that's another good point. Does CodeIgniter want to actually honor the access modifiers now? I know you used to have to put an underscore if you wanted to have a private method. So if you didn't want a method of yours to be accessible to the URL route that I just showed you, for example, you're obviously going to have certain methods that you don't want the public to be able to access. So what you did in 1.7 was put an underscore before the name of the method, and that basically told CodeIgniter not to allow that method to be called publicly.
That had to be a PHP 4 hack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was pretty early in earlier versions. I remember using the private method in 1.6 or 1.7, and it seemed to work fine with accessor methods. Little tricks of the trade, I guess.
So, as you can see, we're not really doing anything within the edit create view. We're loading the head again and the footer. We're just echoing out the form that we used our helper to create. And so, as you can see, that saves you a lot of time and trouble. It's the form helper and CodeIgniter is one of the really useful things about CodeIgniter. once you submit the form, what happens is it calls the save method.
Right there.
So once you've submitted the form, the save method is called, and you begin all the elements within your form are passed through post. So what you do want to do ideally within your save method is traverse through post, sanitize it, and then input it. Either you can persist it to your model that we've loaded once again over here. And so we're simply calling the update post method within our model. And what that would do is update our post given the post input variables that we're passing in.
We're running pretty close on time. Maybe I should start on the delete.
Okay, and another quick thing I want to show you is the
Awesome logout button.
Yep.
Yeah, so we didn't implement the user authentication, so that logs you out currently. It doesn't. It just says log out.
So that about covers it for the admin controller. If you guys have any questions about the code, it's all available. It's
Soon.
going to be available
Yeah.
on GitHub. So if you want to log on there and then look through the code, feel free to make any contributions, any changes that you want to recommend. This is obviously not perfect. Far from it.
Yeah, but not bad for like 3 hours last night. All right, so as you can see, we have the CR and the U part, but we don't have the delete. So we're going to go ahead and add that here after insert.
Does the order matter?
No. So first we need to load the model. And then, so let's go into the model, add a delete method. And we're going to pass in an ID. And we're going to say delete from Crud posts where Crud posts ID is equal to the thing you pass in. Then we're going to run the query. And close that method. So back in admin, so we're going to pass in, like edit, we're going to have a pass in an ID and set that to null by default. And if identity we are going to call this log model delete. That's what we call it. Delete. Pass in if it worked, we're going to redirect to the admin page. So this is basically like the header function in PHP. And then if it didn't work, go fail.
So,
Can you scroll up and see right in front?
Oh,
When you scroll over
so
what's the second parameter passed into the model function?
second parameter.
It's an alias, it's an
It's an
alias.
alias?
Yeah.
So you could
So if you wanna refer
capitalize
to
block,
it.
you could capitalize block with a block model object if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good point. And is it required?
No, it's not required.
So let's see if that works.
No, your model is not required. In the,
Will you write that ID in val for me?
It just hurts.
Yeah.
In val,
Yeah. You don't get it.
Red.
so
You can put it inside the same if, right? If not, it'd be.
Let's put it in the blog model.
okay.
Yeah.
So on the back of the delete query, where you got equals ID,
Yeah.
just make it equals end of the string dot int val ID.
Val. ID like that.
Yeah.
there's no risk.
And you have to remove it from the
It
query.
returns the user value of the ID, so
So it's cast it to an int, is that right?
And that-
No, it just
you-
returns the,
if it's using ABC.
it returns the numbers with the.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to remove it from the actual query.
It's,
You got ID twice in there.
Yeah.
returns an integer instead of an first.
So it's typing.
So inval will turn whatever that variable is into an integer. If it's a weird string or something, it'll make it a 0.
Okay.
So
Got it.
it won't delete your type.
Okay, so if yeah, right, just return. Okay, so let's delete something. And then delete one.
Sweet.
So one thing I should mention with my Chrome is it does the request as I'm typing, so you can see it, right? Like it's constantly doing the request as I'm typing.
Yeah.
So there we just deleted 2. Now we can delete 5, and 10 doesn't work. So there we go.
Did you hang on the mirror page for 10? Can you do 10 again?
Oh,
Because it returns true, always the model,
Yeah.
it's always returning true.
We get the gist there.
yeah. So
You
we're
could,
gonna have-
you could catch that and use it to throw up some error page or.
right.
Or for that matter, log it somewhere.
Yeah,
if
it's
somebody typed
access
something
attempts,
weird.
right.
How does logging work in CodeIgniter?
It has some built-in logging with CodeIgniter 2 that it is in the logs folder here. But you have to turn it on. Yeah, so all messages. error underscore log?
Yeah, error underscore log.
Or is there built-in? Yeah, I don't think there's a debug class. Let's just override.
There we go.
General topics area, that way in.
Area. Yeah, show error. That's the built-in one.
The log message.
Log message. Yep.
An example.
So that's how you would do it. But I think since we have it set so high, I bet there's probably something in it now.
I think you have to set where it belongs to.
Maybe so. Yeah. That must be the case.
Yeah, I was about to ask where it goes, so we can go look at it. You have to tell it where it goes, so to speak.
Yep. So I think that's pretty much it. You know, definitely want to log out after we're done.
So it sounds like the impression I got was CodeIgniter is a thing you would use if you need something small and fast.
Yep.
Developed quickly,
Yeah.
not something if it's large and complicated.
Not necessarily. There's a lot of emphasis put on speed of coding.
Okay.
So like a blog is a perfect example. If you're setting up a blog over the weekend, use CodeIgniter. But if you're doing like anything really complex, really object-oriented in PHP, you probably want to use that framework. It's more enterprise level.
Is there any other questions?
On the admin aspect, you have the read through admin was the premises that only admins
Right.
can do it in a few seconds.
We haven't implemented that yet. What you would do for DX off, you would go into the admin controller and at the top, in the constructor, I can scroll. In the constructor, you would call some method in here like is logged in, right? And then if it is, then they can do the admin type functionality. And otherwise, like send them to the main page. You know, that's usually how that works for admin type stuff. And if you had admin stuff in your blog controller and you didn't want to do it for the entire class, you could do that same functionality like in like an index or in some other method in a different controller itself.
So like if some of the functions you wanted available, but not all.
Right.
Just put it.
Exactly.
So shouldn't those have been underscored also with the first character that we talked before about?
Well, we would want it to be visible to the web, but we would only want the admin to access it.
This is just a general unrelated question, but I can't figure it out. I have both IIS and Apache on my computer, and they run into conflicts with each other. Is there a way to have both of them on the same computer?
Yeah, definitely. So you would just need to configure one to be on port 80 and then one to be on like 8080. So depending on which one you wanted on a particular port. But maybe we could cover that afterwards when we wrap things up. Does anybody have anything else relating to the application?